Hello guys, so I'm going to present now to you the guidelines on writing multiple choice questions. But first, let us have some of the advantages of writing multiple choice questions. First, versatility. Assess the various levels of learning outcomes from basic recall to application analysis and evaluation. So you see, if you are creating questions, test questions for that matter, using multiple choice questions, the learning outcomes varies from the basic recall to application analysis and evaluation. So meaning to say, all of these are covered if you are using multiple choice questions. Number two is reliability. So multiple choice questions are less susceptible to guessing than true or false questions. It makes them more reliable means of assessment. The reliability is enhanced when the number of multiple choice items focused on a single learning objectives is increased. So instead of students picking two options only, selecting one option from two options, in multiple choice, the reliability is enhanced because of the number of items or answers to choose from. Number three is validity. So multiple choice questions, because students can typically answer multiple choice item more quickly than an essay. Tests based on the multiple choice items can typically focus on a relatively broad representation of course material, thus increasing the validity of the assessment. So meaning to say, in a multiple choice questions, the coverage of assessment is very broad. Now, what is a multiple choice item? A multiple choice item consists of a problem known as the STEM and a list of suggested solutions known as alternatives. The alternatives consist of one correct or best alternative, which is the answer, and incorrect or inferior alternatives known as distractors. So this is the anatomy of a multiple choice question. So the question itself is the STEM, and the alternatives are composed of the distractors and one correct answer. Now, how do you construct an effective STEM? So the STEM should be meaningful by itself and should present a definite problem. So see to it that when you are creating questions for multiple choice, it should be meaningful, and as much as possible, it should present a definite problem. So one example of a STEM which is not meaningful is this. So which of the following is a true statement? So questions of this type fall more precisely fall under the true or false questions. This is a better STEM. What characteristic is relatively constant in mitochondrial genomes across species? Okay, so usually a better STEM is in the form of a complete question. So in comparison, we have there the meaningful STEM and not meaningful STEM. Number two, the STEM should not contain irrelevant material, which can decrease the reliability and the validity of the test scores. So see to it that the words being used in creating STEM are related to each other, so you do not confuse students in reading your STEM or the questions. Next, the STEM should be negatively stated only when significant learning outcomes require it. So students often have difficulty understanding items with negative phrasing. So as much as possible, we should avoid giving STEM which are in a negative form. So one good example of a negative phrasing is this. So which of the following is not true about mitochondria? So the word's not true make it fall under the negative phrasing. Another negative phrasing is all of the following are true about mitochondria except. So the word except made it fall under the negative phrasing. So one good better use of negative phrasing is this example. So a water type extinguisher is suitable for putting out a fire caused by burning all of the following except. So we have there the choices. We have alcohol, cotton, paper, and wood. The stem should be a question or a partial sentence. So a question stem is preferable because it allows the student to focus on answering the question rather than holding the partial sentence in working memory and sequentially completing it with each alternative. So as much as possible, all stem must be in the form of a question. So let us avoid using interior block in a multiple choice question such as this. Alright, so sometimes we see questions which uses interior blank. So this is not a good example of how a better stem is used in a multiple choice questions. So this is a better MCQ in addition to the nucleus, which are organelles contain DNA. So you have there the three options. Now, how do you construct effective alternatives? All alternatives should be plausible. So the function of the incorrect alternative is to serve as distractors, which should be selected by students who did not achieve the learning outcome but ignored by students who did achieve the learning outcome. So see to it that all alternatives should be related to each other so that students would not be confused in selecting the best answer. So implausible alternatives such as this should not be used in an MCQ questions. So who gathered the data that help reveal the structure of DNA? So you have there A, B, C, D, and E. Number 2, alternatives should be stated clearly and concisely. So items that are excessively wordy assess students' reading ability rather than their attainment of the learning objective. So as much as possible, alternatives should be short and concise. So this is one good example of a wordy alternative. So we try to avoid these alternatives when we are to use multiple choice questions. So these are extremely long alternatives. Alternatives should be mutually exclusive. So alternatives with overlapping content may be considered trick items by test takers. So excessive use of which can erode trust and respect for the testing process. So we should be careful in selecting alternatives when using multiple choice questions. So we have here example of an overlapping alternatives. So how many chromosomes are found in a typical human cell? Alternative should be homogeneous in content. So which means to say that it should be heterogeneous. All alternatives that are heterogeneous in content can provide cues to a student about the correct answer. So as much as possible, we refrain giving alternative which are heterogeneous because they can give clue to students about the correct answer. So this is one good example of heterogeneous content. It says there that because option A focuses on different type of molecule than items B, C, and D, it can be a cue to savvy test takers to easily select the correct answer. Alternative should be free from clues about which response is correct. So we should bear in mind that test takers are alert to inadvertent clues to the correct answer. So such differences in grammar, length, formatting, and language might be a clue for them to easily select the best answer. So therefore, it is very important that the alternatives should possess the following. Number one, have grammar consistent with the stem, are parallel in form, and as much as possible they should be similar in length, and they use similar language. This is for the students not to easily identify the correct answer from among the options. The alternatives all of the above and none of the above should not be used. Why? When all of the above is used as an answer, test taker who can identify more than one alternative as correct can select the correct answer even if unsure about the other alternatives. Likewise, when none of the above is used as an alternative, test takers who can eliminate a single option can thereby eliminate the second option. In either case, students can use partial knowledge to arrive at the correct answer. So we must refrain from using, usually we find these alternatives as the last option. So it is not proper to use all of the above and none of the above as an alternative to a MCQ types of questions. The alternative should be presented in logical order. So as much as possible, we arrange them alphabetically or by numerical to avoid bias towards certain positions, which again may give a clue to test takers. An example of logical internal to the question is this. In this reaction, which molecule is being oxidized? So as you can observe, the options, the alternatives there are not arranged in order. So one good example of a alternative which is arranged in alphabetical order is this. So you see the options or the alternatives are arranged in alphabetical order. If in case the options are numbers, see to it that they are also arranged either by from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. The number of alternatives can vary among items as long as all alternatives are plausible. So it is not really a problem or a question whether how many alternatives be used in a multiple choice questions. Okay, so there is little difference in difficulty, discrimination, and test score reliability among items containing only 2, 3, and 4 distractors. So maybe we can use if not 4, we use 5 distractors or 5 alternatives in an MCQ. These are the additional guidelines. So in writing multiple choice questions, we avoid complex multiple choice items, so in which some or all of the alternatives consist of different combinations of options. So these are complex multiple choice. So choices such as A and B, B and C, A and C are not good alternatives. Keep the specific content of items independent of one another. So savvy test takers can use information in one question to answer another question. So we must refrain from creating questions which give them a hint to other questions. So that's all. Looking forward that after this presentation you would be able to create a meaningful MCQ questions for your students. Thank you.